Hello and welcome to Picture This, a podcast from the photo archives of the Albuquerque Museum. My name is Jill Hartke, and I am the Digital Archivist here at the museum. Today we are peering into the life and work of one of Albuquerque's most successful photographers. In the photo archives of the Albuquerque Museum is a large collection of negatives and prints from Milner's studio, which operated from 1919 until 1958 and produced some of the finest images in the museum's collection. A portrait of the proprietor of the studio shows an unassuming middle-aged white woman wearing glasses and a pleated collared blouse. Here is the story behind that portrait. Alabama Milner was born in a small town outside of Birmingham, Alabama, in 1880. She was the second youngest of at least 14 children, born to a retired merchant and his at least third wife. Her father was nearly 70 years old by the time Alabama was born, and both of her parents died when she was young, leaving Alabama to be raised by her older siblings, many of whom remained single and had no gainful employment. Alabama became interested in photography at an early age, and after high school, she headed to McMinnville, Tennessee, to enroll in the Southern School of Photography. Run by a renowned pioneering photographer named W.L. Dad Lively, the Southern School of Photography was the largest school in the world, devoted solely to the teaching of photography. Alabama soaked in all she could about lighting, retouching, posing, background work, and the making of prints and negatives. After finishing her coursework, she returned to Alabama, this time living in Montgomery with her brother Algernon and his family. She found work at Herbert Tressler's photography studio, a long-running and well-respected studio in town. Over the years, Alabama worked her way up, from clerk to assistant photographer at Tressler's studio. In July 1918, Alabama and her sister Aura, along with a nephew named Roger and a niece named Josephine, moved to Albuquerque to find a better climate for the treating of tuberculosis, which both Aura and Roger suffered from. Alabama managed to find rooms for rent directly above William Walton's photography studio on West Central Avenue. Liking the place and the climate, they wrote back to Algernon in Montgomery, and by 1919, he had followed his sisters west and brought his family to Albuquerque. Algernon joined Alabama in the photography business, working at William Walton's studio, just long enough to learn a bit of the business and buy it out from William Walton, officially beginning the life of Milner's studio. Alabama and Aura moved into a house at 509 East Silver Avenue, where both sisters would live the rest of their lives. Algernon was more interested in the real estate and insurance business than photography, and he signed the photography studio completely over to Alabama in the early 1920s. Alabama, now in her early 40s, was the sole proprietor of her own studio, fulfilling the dream that she had held growing up outside of Birmingham. But this was just the beginning. Her realized ambitions would soon blossom into a successful business venture that would span the next 30 years. Alabama's education at the Southern School of Photography taught her how to set a scene, using leading lines, light, and empty spaces to create an atmosphere that showcased her creative nature. The high quality of her work shines through the hundreds of photographs in the museum's collection. Taking a cue from her experience at Tressler's, she moved Milner's studio to a top-floor space with skylights and open rooms, and conveniently located near department stores where she could purchase props for portrait sittings. Her portraiture could be dramatic and unique, showcasing movement and flow instead of more traditional, stagnant poses. As good as her portraits were, her commercial work was excellent. and she became a popular photographer for hire for businesses with advertising needs. Her images are some of the finest examples of photography in Albuquerque. Alabama was a great supporter and mentor to other women. Her sister, Ora, had just a first-grade education, as well as health problems, which left Alabama as the sole breadwinner of the household. The world of professional women in Albuquerque was not large, but it was organized. Alabama was one of the founding members of the Albuquerque Business and Professional Women's Club. The club members were self-described live-wire businesswomen who, in 1927, welcomed a conference by the New Mexico Educational Association and announced directly to the teachers through the newspaper, "The ranks of up-and-coming business and professional women await you." The club members pledged their united strength toward gaining a better foothold for women in business professions. They believed a key to women becoming more powerful was efficient preparation for profitable careers. Alabama upheld the pledge of the club by hiring women, often widows, as clerks and assistant photographers throughout the decades. Alabama's mentorship was important because her studio could boast a proprietor that had been educated at a school dedicated to the art of photography. She knew more about the ins and outs of a camera and the setting up of a shot than most, and she viewed the passing on of her knowledge to other women as paramount to the success of all women in business. In the late 1930s, Alabama and Ora welcomed their older sister Ida and her husband William to the little house on Silver Avenue. A nephew named Judge joined the household as well. Throughout her life, the Milner family had supported Alabama, and she was a pillar of support in return. Her talent for photography and her drive to succeed financially ensured that she was in a position to return the support she had been given as a child. She cared for many of her siblings and nieces and nephews, and the majority of them passed through Albuquerque at one time or another. In 1955, Alabama officially retired, and in 1958, she sold Milner's studio and all its contents to Bob Davis Photography. The following year, in December 1959, Alabama Milner passed away at her home on East Silver Avenue at the age of 79. She left a legacy as a pioneering photographer and a prosperous businesswoman who raised the standard of opportunities for women to make their own way in life. The support of her siblings and extended family was the cornerstone to her success, but Alabama's ambition to educate herself and her determination to build a thriving, female-led professional contingent in Albuquerque's business world was the force behind one of the most successful photography studios Albuquerque has ever known. Thank you for joining us for Picture This with the Albuquerque Museum. Please join us next time for the story behind another photograph in the museum's collection.